that would have been that for the home.
Yeah, most of the kids that were there when they crossed.
Right in this hour.
Are we ready, Karen?
We can start out.
Yeah, we are.
Ready? Okay, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please, Karen?
Yes, Commissioner Chappelle,
Here.
Commissioner Cohen,
Here.
Commissioner Jay,
Here.
Commissioner Oliveros,
Here.
Commissioner Proskevich,
Here.
Commissioner Schwartzler.
All right, everybody have a chance to review the minutes from the September 12th, 2022 meeting. And are there any changes to note? All right. I take a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. We don't have a lot of visitors in the audience tonight, so I suppose we'll just move right down to the new business. This evening, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on legislative amendment LA-2022-06 to consider amendment of the Independence Development Code notice requirements. The Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the City Council based on the complete record, including the testimony received at tonight's public hearing. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and the state of Oregon. This is a type 4 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing tonight, staff will identify the applicable substantive criteria from the city's comprehensive plan and or state of Oregon statewide planning goals. For anyone wishing to speak, we are asking you to use the speaker cards that are provided. Called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair and you must state your name and address for the public record. Before we begin, does any commissioner wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in this matter? Right. That's the case. I will now open the public hearing LA-2022-06 and we will listen to our staff report.
Perfect. So hi, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting tonight. This item before you is a proposed change to the noticing requirements in the Independence Development Code. The change is relatively small, but it would kind of change how we do things just a little bit. This is based on a request by the Historic Preservation Commission, who said, and you'll remember we talked about this, the Historic Preservation Commission felt like we weren't doing a good job of providing notice to neighbors when land use actions were coming before this board or before them. And that's, I mean, currently how we do notices is we provide notice by mail to people within 250 feet radius from the project site, and we also post in the newspaper. And both of those are supposed to occur 20 days before the public hearing. Now, looking at state law, after their request, we said, well, shoot, we're supposed to do the mailed notice, though in state law, it's actually a smaller radius than we use. It's smaller than that 250 feet. But it didn't say anything about publishing notice 20 days in advance of the public hearing. And so based on that, we thought, or well, I thought, shoot, we can reduce those newspaper notice requirements a little bit, and we can actually start doing something different, like posting on the website for certain land use applications or posting on the project site for certain development applications. And that's exactly what this proposed change would do. In short, it would require notice to be still sent by mail to people within 250 feet of a project site. It would be require folks to begin to post notice on a project site via a notice board provided by the city. It would still require newspaper notice for certain land use actions. Those land use actions are proposed to be site design review applications, subdivisions, and planned unit developments. And it would also start publishing notice on the city website for those same 3 types of development applications. Basically, the reason for it in part is, especially when we're sending the notice to a newspaper, it hinders quick project review. Typically, I have to send that out a month in advance of any public hearing that we have. That's especially, it's not troublesome, but it hinders a quick project review, especially for little, I'll say, historic preservation commission applications. Like someone's trying to add a door to the back of their building or to change some sort of structure, and it's like, sorry, you're not going to get on until the next month's historic preservation commission meeting. Typically, it's like you have to have your application in 30 to 31 days in advance of the hearing, just to get that newspaper notice. Just because of how it times out. The newspaper notice also costs a lot. It's about $100 at least each notice, and we send out these notices, I would say 3 or 4 times a month. So that adds up pretty quick, and it provides a relatively small return on investment because we don't get a whole lot of people saying to us, "Hey, I read your notice in the newspaper and I came to this public hearing as a result." We feel like we're going to be far more effective if we provide the notice signs on the project sites, and we're posting it on the websites, and all that sort of stuff. So that's essentially what this change is about. To evaluate this, you can look at some of the citizen participation goals or citizen involvement goals in the Independence Comprehensive Plan. They're included on page 8 of your packet. You can also look at subchapter 10, the general provisions, and then subchapter 11 there. And my comments on each of those are included within the staff report. Basically, I did change after I talked with you folks, I did talk to the Historic Preservation Commission, wanted me to tighten up this language a little bit. I also reached out to the city of Monmouth to find out exactly how much the size of their signs are that they post on a project site. And they don't have it specifically in their code, and their signs are, I can't remember exactly how, and I did call a sign company too, and originally my notice sign, it was like, we're talking multiple posts and everything like that to make it work. And so it was like, okay, let's not put a sign size in there, and just allow the city to give to essentially say where it's going to go. It has to be visible from the major roadway. I don't know. And it has to be posted by the project applicant at least 20 days in advance. So that's essentially how, and the Historic Preservation Commission sort of looked at that, the last language, and were like, you need to tighten this up a little bit. So that's why you see B as it's written on page 11 there. It says posted on the proposed development site. The notice shall be posted by the project applicant at least 20 days before the public hearing, using the city provided notice board in a location considered suitable by the City of Independence. The location of the proposed notice shall be visible from the highest classified adjacent roadway, i.e. arterial, collector, or local street. So that gets to the historic preservation concerns that they identified. So based on that, based on all of those things, I would recommend that you folks forward while you could take a look at this and make any additional tweaks that you see necessary. But I do think that this is ready to go to the city council for their consideration. Any questions?
I have a question. Why are we only proposing to start publishing notice of the larger projects on the website? Why would we not just post everything on the website?
I mean, we could definitely do that. I think it's partially like, I mean, we could absolutely do that. It's partially like interest. Not everybody's going to be interested per se in like some of the stuff that comes before the Historic Preservation Commission is indeed smaller stuff. We could post literally everything on the website. That would be.
Is that a burden to staff to maintain that, keep that updated?
I mean, it would probably not, but like at the same time, like if we're sometimes it does get kind of busy and it takes me a bit to get back to the website and actually tweak stuff when things are busy. And so that's partially why, and I mean, we could absolutely put everything on the website if that was something that we wanted to do.
So what you're not putting on the website are the small, like changing a doorway, changing where a path goes sort of thing?
Well, it would be, and for some reason I thought I brought my computer down, but it wasn't here. So type 2 applications, let me remember all of them. There's definitely Historic Preservation Commission review. There's it's something that we could definitely do. Oh, yeah, type 2, thank you. So conditional use permits, major partition subdivisions, variances. I mean, based on that list, yeah, we could absolutely put all of those on there.
I just think there's a good balance between being transparent and burdening the staff, but wherever that sweet spot is.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, that we could put that on there. It'd probably be a, yeah, we could do that. So,
Then people couldn't say they didn't know, I guess. If you posted it,
right,
there's more chance of them seeing that.
right. And I mean, that is something that we're wanting to do. Part of my concern too is I don't want to like add something procedurally that somehow I might miss, and then all of a sudden, like the land use proposal gets thrown out because I missed a procedural step, because I mean, that's, I don't know, that's partially why I wrote it like that. But I do think based on that list, we should be able to do that.
Well, I mean, based on what you said for type 2 land use notice of hearings, shall be provided in each of these methods. I mean, you've committed to
Doing that
in
anyway.
doing that anyway. And same for type 3. So I mean, it seems like
Yeah.
it's covered. I think you're good for that.
What are type 1 land use decisions?
Those are the lot line adjustments, the city, and Karen, if you pull them up, lot line adjustments, minor partitions, some site design review, administrative variance. These all go to,
These are all done by staff. We don't-
These are all
we don't
done by
have the-
staff. and there is a notice that goes out with these as well. To the folks within 200.
Well, I guess I'll clarify. This is just for type 2 land use decisions. Type 3 doesn't change.
Right, exactly.
Got it. Sorry.
Exactly. And it's type 2 that, because, I mean, part of this has really sort of come to a head based on how the Historic Preservation Commission Code was written, because the Historic Preservation Code, it recognized the fact that they were acting as judges for all of these historic preservation decisions. And so it gave them a land use process for them to review type 2 land use decisions. And like in that process, we're like provided notice like all the time, like for their hearings, it feels like. So I mean, that's part of it. And unfortunately, we're providing notice in a way that's they feel is completely unproductive. So, I mean, the mail notice is fine.
So past that,
Yeah,
I think we all, if I remember right, we all, like, I personally like the sign piece.
yeah, I like the sign piece too.
So I also feel like it's written in a way that in a location considered suitable by the city. And I imagine, and if the city's providing the board
Yeah,
and whatnot, then great.
yeah,
So
exactly.
this seems like this makes a lot of sense.
So one thing I can do is, what I'll do to the draft that goes to the city council is I could put, published on this, take that whole last sentence on D and just make it a new D and then have for site design. Review applications, subdivisions, planning and developments published in a newspaper of general circulation, period, that will be E. And then, just for the rest of it, published on the city website a minimum of 10 days prior to the publication.
Yeah, that,
I'll make those two separate and just make it clear that publishing on the city website is for all types of applications.
Yeah.
I can,
Any other questions of Fred? We don't have anybody in the audience that wishes to testify. So I will go ahead, if there is no objection, I will now close the record of the public hearing. And we can deliberate. I have a motion, suggested motion for hearing, will you share it with our commission, please?
I like the splitting that whole point. That's smart. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Who's feeling lucky?
As provided, and there was an amendment.
There was an amendment, yeah.
yeah,
And what exactly is the amendment? How do I phrase the amendment?
As amended, I think.
Well, but I get it.
As discussed in the event.
do you want me to try it?
It's really just with the new bullet point E.
Yeah, we're just splitting D into two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that will work as long as Brett can give me good language to put
That will.
minutes with me.
You betcha.
I move to approve file number LA-2022-06, recommending to the city council the amendment of the Independence Development Code, notice requirements, adopted findings, conditions, and staff recommendations as provided in the staff report and as amended.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Very quick. Okay, so I brought a couple of videos, but I don't know if you want to watch a couple of videos or if you just want to watch one video. Thoughts? One or two? We got two videos.
Let's do one and see where we land.
Okay, so we'll watch the second one first. So, number 7 there, Karen.
You want to see.
What do you mean by? Oh, I see. Okay.
Has anybody ever read or heard anything about this Strong Town?
I follow them on
Yeah.
social media just to
Right,
challenge my thinking.
this is a Strong Towns kind of video.
Yeah.
So I look at this, Fred, and I wonder how Oregon's land use and zoning plays into that structure, because you can't expand our cities and towns.
Right.
We have urban growth boundaries.
We have.
And we have to infill and go up or squeeze closer to meet the need of people moving into our population areas.
That is that the only thing Oregon hate worse than density is, or sprawl is density. So, I mean, nobody wants any of it.
But I know, but
Yeah,
the density keeps the rest of Oregon
Yeah.
what they want,
sure.
right? And
Though every UGB is, I mean, outside of a few certain exceptions in the valley, all UGBs have to get expanded sort of pretty regularly. And people, how do you encourage density? I'll also say this is the reason that I've watched enough strong towns and sort of influenced some of my thinking around parking, and parking doesn't pay the bills. So that's the genesis of a lot of my sort of stance on building more parking, because it doesn't provide value to the city. So I know this is one of our perennial sort of, arguments, but
I just wonder how you bring people.
totally, you have to, how do you balance it all?
It's true. So, hey, I, just out of curiosity, I took assessed value by acre. And I did it. I thought it was kind of interesting, I just did it real quick. I've done this before, and I could do it kind of quick. What I think is interesting about it is that it's sort of true what it says in those videos, but what's really interesting is when you see some of our newer development, because of the smaller lot sizes, really having higher assessed values per acre. And so I think that's interesting. I think that's really interesting. I guess the reason that I wanted to show those videos is I feel like this next year, I think it's clear, like infill is a sustainable way to grow the community. It's an important way to grow the community, and we're seeing a lot of it. And there's going to be some challenges associated with it, just because it's new, it's changing what people have experienced before. So yeah, I guess we recognize it, but I feel like it's something that we need to consider how to do and how to do well. And so as we're over the next year, I think we'll probably take a look at some sort of how we might be able to tweak further our standards for infill development and encourage, houses on smaller lots that can complement neighbors and everything like that. Because I do think it is, especially, it's absolutely the best way to grow, the most sustainable way for us to grow this community.
I appreciate you showing the strong town. I mean, I don't agree with everything by any means, but I think that they both agree with firebrand about stuff.
Yeah,
But
but you absolutely agree with the Strode.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
That's like,
We're using, like, one of the contentions from their group is that a lot of roads are misused. They're doing things that they weren't necessarily designed to do, like they're too wide, and so people go too fast. And so you have to it's a lot of I don't think any of it's necessarily rocket science, but it's the things you don't, unless you're a planner.
Yeah.
Or you don't necessarily think about how towns get built and how it all actually works.
And I think it is interesting to look at what tools and resources, or how you can change the policy to make some of that development or that will happen, like incentivizing ADUs, making that an easier process so that we're not kind of expanding or feeling pressure to expand the urban growth boundary when we absolutely need to. So how do we do everything, maximize everything that we have within that different people to start looking out for
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that you look at is, you know, the older part of town, is lighter. You know, some of the older residential neighborhoods surrounding, sort of west of downtown. But you see darker dots where the lot sizes are particularly small. And so you think, okay, there's a house on, and primarily they're on corners. You know, they're on corners of streets. And so, hey, is there a typology there that you can look at and say, hey, we have built second homes on some of these, essentially a corner lot divided in half, and then put a house on each of the lots. Is that something that we could figure out how to do? And could we figure out how to do it without having to allow a duplex on both?
And this map still doesn't, I know what you're getting at, it still doesn't, I mean, ultimately, even like the older part of town, this costs the city much less money.
Yeah.
than-
Yeah, this,
For, I mean, yeah, so it just in terms of actual like running operating costs.
yeah, and so another thing that I printed you off is actually, because it kind of gets, I printed you off the chapter where the book describes this. Just because the Lafayette, Louisiana one, they actually did a return on investment. Everything else, I think, perhaps they did it in Eugene too, but everything else, they actually just did assessed value per acre to sort of get a sense of it. Because their contention was originally like, hey, we'll do assessed value per acre and try and get a sense of who's paying what for the city, and then they compared it to the return on investment in Lafayette. And so that kind of gets lost in the video a little bit. So that's why I printed this off, just to make the whole analysis clear. And so that's why I just did assessed value by acre, because there's no way I could have done it.
Yeah, I'm not saying,
Well, I think it provides a quick and easy snapshot, but it is interesting looking at this in like some of the more historic older parts that assessed value per acre. In some cases, you have smaller homes that are aging and needing repair just because of the age of them versus new neighborhoods that have brand new everything and maybe a little bit larger square footage footprint. So it's probably not comparing quite apples to apples.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
But again, then incentivize, are there other ways to incentivize potential repair funds or ways for people to kind of be able to invest back into those communities and not only upgrade the existing structure and having it used? Because I would argue that some of the older neighborhoods probably have more opportunity lot wise and just with old carriage houses and garages and wherever else is provided.
That's
Use there.
that's absolutely the case, and I would agree with you 100%.
Super interesting.
I mean, I think part of it's almost a campaign around infill and explain, obviously there's a lot of hindering, but I mean, people are concerned about costs and whatever else, and this is the way to fix some of that. But it requires accepting that, we need to find it different.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the part, it still feels like you're constantly combating sort of the NIMBY, not in my backyard kind of piece. And so how do you balance all of that?
Yeah, and I feel like that is going to be a major question for us to try and answer over and I think probably the next year. The housing needs analysis at a certain point will come back, we'll have the draft of that. And I think from that, one of the recommendations that will no doubt come out of it is going to be, hey, we need to figure out how to make infill actually palatable, or, I mean.
Multi-family, residential, and rental.
Yeah.
Properties.
Yeah.
People do not want this.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to take sort of that ROI map that they were talking about and then overlay walkable centers, whatever that average walkable distance is from each of those centers. Because then you could also look at, say, like if we chose downtown being walkable, and let's say it's what, a mile that most people, I mean, I guess it depends.
But what is walkable? I guess I'm
Right.
not sure. Does that mean
Yeah.
access to grocery store, and access to restaurants, and access to whatever other conveniences?
Right. Yeah,
And then we don't have grocery stores
Right.
that often. It's not like a big city where there are bodegas or something.
yeah. I think it's getting people to think of, so, it seems like so often we think of neighborhoods as like putting improvements in like the streets or the houses. And it's looking at like, what can we do to improve the sidewalks and bike lanes and other ways to get people around, because that, to me, also really helps contribute towards those centers. I mean, we don't want to create a center and then have it be reliant on cars getting there. I think that's kind of the point of the strong towns video.
But you also, yeah, you have to incent third places. And so we talked about, I remember we talked about this 2 years ago, where it should be quarter mile apart, quarter mile like a commercial
Right.
spot. And so how do you create those little pockets? But again, it's like, it still becomes I feel like the shoot from the hip reaction to that is a while on that. I don't know if that's,
Yeah,
So,
So-
but to Becky's point, you can start to then map out, like, okay, if you can't walk to a grocery store, where does it start to make logical sense to at least put in a convenience store? I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
and I do think that we did take some steps towards that with that whole neighborhood commercial code where we allowed, you know, especially, I mean, we're looking at sort of that neighborhood, up at Gun Club in Hoffman and said, hey, we got a park here, you know, all of this sort of stuff. What if we allowed, and we did allow, somebody, we did allow the possibility that someone could go up there and put it like a commercial use at that intersection, and that whole idea was sort of based on that idea, like, hey, what if we actually created a complete neighborhood in this area? I mean, so that's one thing about the whole infill. Another thing is, you know, we're gonna, in the next year, we're gonna start the central townage plan. That will give around Central Plaza, that will give us a huge opportunity to like really think about that neighborhood, hopefully using some of these principles, like from the outset, like, and I think that we have a whole lot of opportunity to go in there, because there's not a whole lot of neighbors around, especially on the southern side of Central Plaza. There's just not a whole lot of neighbors around that. So we could go in and really try and make a great walkable place in that spot, so.
Can you bring us at some point some tools that work or that other cities have employed to encourage infill?
Encourage infill.
I guess what are the, because
Marketing tools.
I would say marketing tools, but also like code tools or zoning. I mean,
So one thing I definitely know is South Bend, Indiana has approved, they have builder-ready AV plans.
so you can just,
Just sweep off the shelf.
Yeah, and then you can build them. So stuff like that is
that's,
a definite possibility.
because there's economies of scale.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That would be
That-
interesting
something like
to
that.
see,
I-
those
yeah.
kinds of
I
resources.
want to know more about that.
Honestly, like, if we did something like that, I would love a better duplex plan than a lot of the duplexes that we see in here too. Like, if we had a duplex plan that, say, went in on a lot where it had an alley on the back and a house on the front, then you split the doorways this way. So one faces street, it looked like a single family house, the other faces the alley. That would be really sweet. So, I don't know. There are folks doing some interesting things.
Right. Any other comments or?
So I'll just say one more thing. So at a certain point, I think it's gonna I think I would like to have a conversation with you and the Historic Preservation Commission where we get together and we actually have a conversation about infill and, you know, perhaps the future of downtown. As you remember, the Historic Preservation Code, we talked about which blocks would have sort of house style development on it. I think, and you remember too, the 2040 vision plan, which you folks didn't see, but was adopted by the council, that talked about downtown expanding south. And so I think really trying to get together and really conceptualize what that might look like and making sure that we're prepared if something were to come down the pike. I think that would be beneficial. So I think all of that stuff is probably stuff that we'll need to work on this next year. Perhaps at a certain point, you might get a sign code. We might push that back another year. All of this stuff feels really important, so trying to be ready for it.
Right. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, if that's where we're at. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Goodness gracious.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, no problem.